Welcome. I see people are still getting into the room. We are recording the session and we'll share that in a follow-up. So we are going to get started because we have a lot of stuff to get through today. Thank you for joining us for today's panel discussion about parenting and childcare. My name is Michelle Artaby and I'm the Director of Workforce Wellbeing and Human Resources at Cornell, and I'll be facilitating the panel. We received many important questions from you in advance, and we'll do our best to get through the main topic areas and answer as many of the frequently asked questions as possible. You can submit live questions using the Q&A feature. We plan to hold more of these sessions, so today is really the starting foundation of this really important discussion. Our goal is to share with you what we know thus far, what considerations will impact the next few months, and give you some parenting strategies to consider. We keep hearing the word unprecedented, and it is so true. It's unprecedented for families, and it's unprecedented for childcare providers and schools and employers. So as we all try to prioritize the health and safety of our communities, we know that there are a lot of implications for working families who are just trying to keep all of the pieces together. So let's begin talking about these issues. We're going to move over to our panel now. And I'd like to introduce Mary Opperman, Vice President and Chief Human Resource Officer for Cornell, Sue Dale Hall, Chief Executive Officer of the Child Development Council, Melissa Perry, Family Services Director of the Child Development Council, and Diane Braddock, Work-Life Consultant. So Mary, just to get us started, this has been a really challenging time for working families. Will you please share what is known about Cornell's return to campus and any thoughts you have about the challenges working parents are currently facing?
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate being asked to be here today. I'm not an expert in the area of childcare, so my role here is somewhat limited, but I appreciate having the opportunity to talk to all of you. We are learning along with the rest of you how the state is thinking about reopening by region. And if you watched the governor today, you know that the southern tier, which is the region that Tompkins County is in, so that doesn't include where all of you live, but it does include if you work at Cornell where you work. So the southern tier has been approved along with Finger Lakes and I think Mohawk Valley to move into what's considered phase one. Phase one is a number of things are going to begin to be reopened. So there'll be, I think, curbside pickup for more than just food, forestry, agriculture. There are a number of things that will begin to reopen in phase one. So what does that mean to all of us? If you look at the 4 phases that the governor has set, you'll see that education is in phase 4. But I want to remind you that the university, that reflects, we believe that reflects our education, our in-person education to students, because as you know, we kept all of our classes going online, and so I believe phase 4 is the anticipation of return to classrooms. But we do a lot of other things. Oh, I know one of the other things in phase 1 is construction. So the university has not closed. We have continued to have essential services occurring on the campus, particularly for those students who have stayed, but also in terms of keeping the campus safe and the utilities operating. There have been services at the Cornell University Animal Hospital. So services have continued in areas that were either determined to be essential, like veterinary care, and the care of the students that were there. Most of the rest of the campus, with the exception of those who are keeping the campus safe and the students fed, and some assistance to the online services, and like I said, the vet school, have been working remotely. So we don't know when that will change. We expect that even as we start to imagine, for example, reopening research, which is the thing that we are planning and hoping to reopen first, we don't know how that will go yet. We're working on that right now. but it is likely also to be in phases. Even in that, even when we get to the point where research is permitted to restart, we will have most people staying at home and working remotely. So with that as a backdrop, I want to acknowledge the fact that we're working remotely has lots of challenges. And I've said on numerous occasions, what we're doing now is not really working remotely. We are working from home during a pandemic. And so that means that many of the supports that you would have in place if you were working remotely, your kids would be going to school, you would have childcare services, you would be able to get out, come to campus when you needed to, things like that. Those have not been available to us. And so it has really added to the stress of being at home and trying to get work done. And so I just want to say that I'm aware that life has been very difficult. And if you have children at home, we have people who have very small children at home. We have people who have teenagers at home. We have people who have elementary and middle schoolers at home. And we have people who have them all at home, including their college students who are at home. And we also have people who have all of that and they're caring for a vulnerable, maybe family member. So lots going on in your houses. So just a few things to say. We've heard these things and we just want to acknowledge them. That's really hard. And so if I had one piece of advice, I'd say that's okay. You didn't create this situation. We don't have all the resources to perfectly resolve the issues that you're facing. And that's mostly what I'm going to tell you. But in the meantime, if you have a child in the background, or I have a grandchild living with us now, and I have a really old dog that snores through almost every single Zoom meeting I have, it's okay, it's fine. Don't feel that because you have children in your house who are maybe being loud or coming up to ask you questions. I have one colleague whose daughter crawls up thinking that no one can see her, and of course you can see her, but she's trying really hard. That's all part of where we are. Please don't feel that you have to hide your family, however you define your family, from the realities that you're dealing with. It's perfectly fine. And in fact, it helps to humanize a really stressful situation. We will, as we think about reopening, continue to think deeply about all of these issues that are going to make some of our reopening more challenging. We'll try as best we can to tell you what we know. Many of you have seen me on other, if I don't know, I'm perfectly comfortable telling you I don't know. We know that childcare is necessary in order for you to be able to work when the time comes to come back to campus. And so our panelists are going to talk about the status of childcare. We know that there's going to be some limitations to what you can do even while you're continuing to work remotely. And we're going to be as flexible as we possibly can. So I just want to say that we've been talking with supervisors and encouraging them to think about how to be flexible during these periods of time. So if you are in a situation where your work, if you're homeschooling and you have small children and your help doesn't come in the form of someone else until late, talk to your supervisor about whether or not you can chunk out your hours that you're getting your work done in a different way. I think sometimes we don't ask because we're afraid we'll be told no, but I'd encourage you to try to work these things out with your supervisors. This is not a situation any of you created. It's a situation that you find yourself in. So please be open with your supervisor and work towards trying to find a mutually agreeable resolution. We know that some of you are worried that if you're not right there in case your supervisor calls or checks in on you, that may be negatively seen. I would recommend that you make really clear at the start of each week what your deliverables are for the week. What is your supervisor expecting for you to get done, and how might you do that in a way that that works with your own personal circumstances. We don't necessarily want to be focused on FaceTime. We want to be focused on outputs. So if you think of FaceTime as kind of an input, we want to be focused on outputs. I found that this, oh, sorry, that's my grandson crying at the moment, if you can hear him, sorry. We found that supervisors are just trying to do the right thing. They're trying to help. They don't quite know what that means, and sometimes they're afraid to ask, fearing that they're invading your privacy. So open those conversations up. So then I guess I'd find the last thing I guess I would say is, I hope you're taking care of yourselves. I think sometimes, I know as a parent myself, the stress to feel like you have to keep outperforming at work, and the stress that you have about, I don't know what your house looks like, but mine's a disaster area, and the stress of having children and at home, and then feeling the strain when you have to go out to grocery shop or do anything like that. It's really hard on people. So if you're not sleeping, if you're having difficulty concentrating, seek out help. Use our services. We have an FSAP. All of our support services are listed on our website. Please don't try to go it alone. If it starts to feel overwhelming, call a friend, call the support services, get help. Nobody in our lifetime, well, nobody in the workplace, so I think that's probably a fair statement, has ever been through anything like this before. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Measure how much you watch television, especially the news. I know for me, I now know the feeling that I get in the pit of my stomach when I've watched too much news and I'm starting to feel like overwhelmed by the potential, or I start imagining all sorts of things down the road that I can't control. Take care of yourselves. If you can get out for a walk, get out for a walk. If you're worried that you might get called when you're going out for a walk, let your supervisor know that you're going to take a walk. I mean, it's not, maybe not today, but you know, it's really important to get out, make sure you're eating well, and just be kind to yourself. This is a time we want to come back from and feel like we didn't lose ourselves in the process. So I'm going to turn it over. I think I've talked too long, but thank you, Michelle, for letting me get started.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mary. Before we turn it over to Studio Hall to talk about the landscape of childcare, I just want to very quickly state that the Cornell Child Care Center has been providing care to employees that are considered essential personnel. Mixed feelings about using that term, but those that must be on campus right now. We are in the midst of our own reopening plan, and we'll be communicating with families, with the enrolled families, about options as decisions are being made. We won't talk a lot about the Cornell Child Care Center because only a fraction of you are enrolled there, but it is going to be very important to us that it supports the university's broader plan as well. So in thinking about childcare in the broader context, Sue, what is known about the landscape of childcare and summer camps thus far? And what do you think the reopening of childcare and camps will look like from an operational or health and safety perspective? And don't forget to unmute yourself.
All right, thank you. Sorry, it takes me a second to get together. Mary, thank you. I appreciate the comments about caring for yourself, and Michelle also. The Child Development Council, you know, we care for people who care for people. So it's definitely in our DNA to try to be aware of what's going on with the people around us. And for the Child Development Council, that's families and the child care community themselves. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this landscape that really is rugged right now. We're not really, I'm going to back up just a little bit and tell you about what happened in the last 8 weeks or 2 months, just very briefly. When the schools were closed in Tompkins County, and I apologize, I know this is probably a very regional audience. I can give a little bit of information about the surrounding counties, but I'm primarily prepared to talk about Tompkins County itself. When the schools were closed, the county looked at daycare centers and childcare centers in our community as places where more than 10 people congregated, and they were very concerned about that. And they're concerned about the safety of children. So they decided that the childcare centers should be closed, with the caveat that some opened up to serve our frontline workers. And 3 centers stood up to try to do that, Cornell being one of them, and 2 others in our community. We've learned a lot from those centers over this time and what it takes to operate throughout this. I do want to add that home-based, regulated family childcare homes, group family childcare homes, continued to operate throughout the last couple of months, and we learned from them as well. We did see a voluntary drop of home-based care, about 40% drop. So we went from 47 home sites down to 26. And some of them had families who decided that they wanted to pull their children and have the children at home with them too. So the group sizes are a little bit smaller. What we'll be looking at over the next few weeks is how can we ramp back up. On May 4th, the county administrator lifted that, actually did not renew the executive order. So what that means is that the child care centers can begin that reopening, whether they serve the essential personnel or anyone in the community. I don't really think there's going to be a huge sudden availability of care. They're all very concerned about that, and they're making their calls to their families to find ways to support them. So I think it'll be a gradual roll-in and a gradual expansion. We'll talk a little bit about what that could look like at the end. Michelle mentioned that summer options are out there. So 2 of our child care centers do run school-age programming, and will continue to look at offering that in the summer. Many people have heard that some of the summer camps are closing voluntarily, and the rest of us, so that it's sort of a mix of all different kinds of opportunities in the summer. It can be in a child care center or a child care group family or home-based program. It can be a single purpose camp or a sports camp. It can be a camp that's enrolled by the health department and permitted by that health department. And that probably makes up the greatest single places where kids are served in the summer. But there are also school programs and summer school. Pretty much everyone is waiting for the governor probably at the end of the month to give us some idea of what can happen in the summer for the schools, but also for other kinds of programming. So while people are very busy trying to figure out what it could look like, we don't yet know all of the parameters for what it will look like and whether programs will be provided with the opportunity to operate at a modified level in some way. So that's where we're looking for, and looking ahead as this changing landscape is, we don't really know. I think Michelle said that at the very beginning. Everything is changing pretty rapidly. I want to encourage people, because we do have some spaces available in our community now, and we'll be able to anticipate some spaces in the summertime, to call the Child Development Council. And you can reach us at info@childdevelopmentcouncil.org or at our phone number, 273-0259. We can also connect you with folks in the surrounding counties who might know what's going on there. Not all programs were closed in surrounding counties, so it'll look very different depending upon where you're looking for care. So as I said, this will be a gradual change that we'll all be seeing, and there are some spaces available. So that's the good news. One of the things we really wanted to prepare families for is that the changes are going to be not only in size and number of kids, there's the dog, but also in how they're presented to you. So for example, group sizes, the prevailing best practice is no group larger than 10. That includes the teachers that are the adults in the room. That will probably apply to summer camps, childcare, any other settings. So they won't be fully ramped up. Summer camps are used to operating in very large spaces, in cafeterias and out on playgrounds and in the parks. They'll be trying to keep kids at 6 feet apart. If you have a young child, that's almost impossible to achieve. So looking for some creative ways to offer those safety parameters while still giving children the opportunity to learn to get along together and to have fun and to experience the outdoors and to team build, or whatever the case is. Each program is a slightly different angle. Outdoor play structures are pretty much going to probably be closed because they're just too hard to keep clean and after each use. Very likely to be the case. That in our existing child care centers now, they've had to remove a lot of the toys and outdoor play equipment because it's a hazard. It's a potential vector for the virus. You're also going to see child care providers are essential personnel and must wear masks. So this is a big change because children are meeting people sometimes for the first time and they're really not seeing the face. They're only going to see the eyes. And that it's really important that you prepare your child for that. Children in childcare do not have to wear masks. Children under 2 should never be wearing masks because it's a choking hazard, suffocation hazard. Some parents want their children, when they're in public, they need to wear masks right now. So that'll be a little bit of a discussion that you should have with your program as you move ahead, if you do participate in that way. And the other big change, I think, is that as you drop off and pick up procedures are going to change pretty drastically. Some are using drop off as like parents aren't able to enter in. So you have a warm handoff from parent to the caregiver, the teachers, staff. Most kids, if they've been around for a while and they know those places that they're walking into, that will be okay. My son used to stop at the doorway. Every time he came to a door frame, he had transition challenges. He saw that door and he stopped cold. And once we got him in, it was okay, but it really took a parent to make that happen. What's going to be really different if you're handing a brand new child off to a child off to a brand new place, a new site. So there's going to need to be some kind of way to orient that child to the changes that are going to be happening. And that's what I just want to encourage people to think about, that the health and safety also presents quite a big change in how the children perceive their environment. So one thing that the Child Development Council has been doing over the last 8 weeks is meeting regularly with child care center directors. There's been meetings with home base. We've checked in regularly with people. Just last week, the summer camp folks met. How do we reopen? What can we learn from each other? The school-age childcare programs are already thinking about the fall and trying to get pieces in place. The one consistent, regular message is that they care about the health and safety of their children and the children in their program. And they're accustomed to putting in safety measures and making sure children wash their hands and asking them how they're doing every day. This will be amped up, but it's within their wheelhouse. And so we want people to feel a sense that they're not the only ones looking out for their child, that these child care providers care enough to look out as well. So that's the landscape as I see it today.
Thank you so much, Sue. Next, we're going to turn to Melissa Perry of the Child Development Council. Melissa, providing a stable and caring environment for kids is so crucial to their development. We heard from families that are worried that the homeschooling that they're doing is insufficient and that their child will be delayed. Others are concerned about reintegrating their young children into daycare and some regression issues they might be experiencing. What advice do you have for parents that are concerned about their child's emotional and academic development at this time?
Okay. Well, I just want to start off by saying thanks for having me. And I want to express appreciation to the parents right now. This is really, really hard. And there's so much pressure on parents, especially those who are parenting alone. So 2 good things I really want to share, and hopefully everyone hears this, is children are resilient and they can overcome and bounce back from just about anything, including this. The second thing is you're allowed to lower your standards right now. No one is expecting perfection, and certainly not our children. So take it easy on yourself. So let's talk about learning from home. It seems like such a daunting task, and it really is a daunting task to be working and providing care and being a parent. So I just want you to know you can do this. You've been doing this since the day your child was born. Maybe it looks different all the time, but you can do it. So young kids really don't need 6 hours of sit-down instruction time. Really, they learn best through play and hands-on activities. And this is true even for school-age and older kids. So this is a great time to supplement, the learning that they're doing in school. Even for school-age kids, bring out the blocks and the crayons and the board games and the Legos and puzzles and lots of books. I can't stress the books enough. Really, any toy or household object that they can play with safely that sparks them to use their imagination is going to support learning. And really, it's a bonus if they can play with these things independently and if they can be, quiet things when you need them to be. And then there's everyday activities that support learning that you're probably already doing with them. Take cooking, for example. Depending on the age of the child, there's, early literacy and reading comprehension, math and science skills. Kids are learning to follow step-by-step directions, do this first and then this. Even, if you have your baby or your toddler propped up on the table or the counter or sitting near you, you can be labeling the foods and the colors of the foods. That's supporting language and communication skills for them too. So you can also think about, gardening and going for walks, even doing chores. These are all experiences that support children's growth and development at any age, really. And I'll stress again, the reading together. That's really crucial for all the ages. And just know it doesn't have to be perfect. Really just do the best you can and realize that your best and your child's best is really going to look different from day to day, and that's okay. And, as Sue was talking about childcare, if you need childcare, if that's really going to be the best answer for your family, consider that, or maybe an in-home childcare provider is a good option for your family too. So thinking about emotional needs, this is a really difficult time, and so many of us are grieving. We're grieving the loss of normalcy and all of the fun activities and events we're missing out on during this time. And kids, they're such sponges. They're reading our cues. They mirror the emotions of those around them. And this is a really good reason to practice self-care. Like Mary had mentioned, taking the time to care for yourself really allows you to have the emotional strength to care for the children and others around you. So maybe think about what makes you feel rejuvenated. Is it doing yoga or taking a morning walk? Is it listening to music or podcasts? I know I found that rereading favorite books was really comforting to me. It was something familiar and made me feel a lot calmer. So in helping kids develop their own self-care routines is really important too. And think about your child. What does your child need to feel rejuvenated? Is it, building a blanket fort and hanging out in there and drawing and feeling like they have that personal space? or piling a bunch of books in the bed and just reading for a while? Or is it, going outside and running around the house a few times during lunch? What are the things that make them come back afterwards and feel calm and ready to face the rest of the day? So it's really helpful to consider building self-care time for you and your child into your day. And then thinking about, reintegrating back into childcare and school. And this is something that's on the mind of lots of families. And if you haven't started thinking about it already, many people have. So really with any big event or transition, different kids really need different supports. So your child best. What does your child need to transition back into childcare or school? Is it visiting the childcare or the school together first to see the classroom and the teachers, even if this is a place that they had been familiar with? Maybe just doing a little tour there, getting reacquainted. When they go back, is it starting just a few hours a day and then gradually increasing their time? Or maybe, you want to make it a momentous occasion. We're going back to school, so we're going to choose a special back to school outfit and pack a special lunch to take together the night before. Just do whatever works for you and your family. And maybe that's different for each child in your family too. And thinking about that, you probably really want to talk with your child about going back to childcare or school and how childcare is going to be different. As Sue mentioned, it's going to look really differently. Maybe some of their teachers or their friends won't be there. The rooms will probably be set up differently to allow for social distancing. Maybe some activities won't be available to them anymore because they're considered a hazard. So talking about these things with your child can really help prepare them for these changes and help them feel more comfortable. Either way, be prepared for some bumps along the way for you and your child as you adjust to this new normal. One last thing I wanted to say before I wrap up is just know that it's okay to not be okay during this time. This is a really difficult time. And please reach out to the supports if you need someone to talk to. In particular, if you have parenting questions or concerns, the Child Development Council has a warm line that you can call for confidential support. That number is on our website. You can find more information on our website, and the phone number is 273-0259. And your call is answered by, even if you call in the middle of the night, you can leave a message. We'll call you back. Someone who is a child development expert can talk you through that and give you some supports and point you in the right direction too.
All right, thank you so much, Melissa. Next, we're going to turn to Diane Braddock, work-life consultant for Cornell. She has a few slides, which I'm going to pull up. Diane, you work with Cornell families every day on work-life issues such as childcare and parenting. What resources should Cornell parents know about, and what strategies do you expect families using in the coming months to get through this time? And as you're talking, I will bring up the slides.
Really appreciate the opportunity to be part of the panel and share what I've learned and what our parents have taught me along the way. I'd like to share the slides, and what they're really designed to just highlight some of the resources that are available to parents and families. And after this session, we'll be sending out a resource page with some of the links and information. So this is very much uncharted territory, and we're all learning together, as all of our presenters have said. As Cornell's work-life consultant, I hear a lot of the stories, the concerns, and the struggles, sometimes the joys. And then often when we work together, we come up with some really good solutions together. Every scenario is unique, and every solution is not going to be the same for everyone. So I'm hoping some of these suggestions and some of the panel that we're doing today, as well as ongoing, will be helpful to you. It's easy to become overwhelmed with the amount of information right now that's out there. And so what we've attempted to do is want to keep you informed as to some basic steps that you can take right now and also in the future. So our team has pulled together some resources, and we've compiled those together in 3 primary areas. One is in the parenting newsletter and the e-list. The parenting newsletter comes out on a weekly basis, usually on Monday, and it's filled with information about resources, activities, community events, things that you can include with your family to keep you busy, to keep you learning, to keep everyone well. The well-being updates also comes out on Monday now on a weekly basis, and it has ideas and practical tips for your family, for your well-being. As everyone has mentioned, you need to take care of yourself now more than ever, and then your family's well-being as well. And then the COVID-19 employee page is one that talks more about preparedness, making sure that you're aware of all the benefits that are out there available to you, resources in all the various well-being dimensions, and then some guidance and regulations that would be helpful for you to know. We also encourage you to think about your family needs. It was different week 1, week 3, week 5, and it's going to be different in July and August for you. So as we move ahead with this, we need to reevaluate over time what's working for you and your partner, what's working for your family. You need to also communicate those needs together with your partner, your supervisor, your team, to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that we're constantly updating each other. We also encourage you to build and maintain your network of supporters and helpers. None of us want to face all of this alone, and it's important to surround yourself with people who really care about you and who can support you through all the decisions that you're making. Lastly, we'd like you to reach out for help. There's a variety of different offices and resources that are out there and available to you. We're going to highlight those in the resource page that we'll send after this. But also just know that when you reach out for help, it's not a sign of weakness. It's really a sign of strength, that you want some additional ideas, some thoughts, to share some ideas maybe that you found with other parents that are working, and vice versa. Next slide. So how do you pull all of this together? There's a variety of different strategies that can be used. We've already mentioned some. We want to highlight a couple. It looks like there's going to be some small group camp options this summer. We hope that those will be available to you, and as we learn more about those hours, when they're available and so on, we will for sure share those with you. There are family and group homes that right now continue to provide programs. The family care options are licensed, regulated, home-based care, and they're up to 6 children. The group family care situations are up to 12 children. So you may want to consider one of those options as you move forward. Maybe something that worked for you in the past couple weeks may not work for you in the future. So we're hoping that you can think creatively and move ahead with whatever's going to be the best match for your family. Finding the right care for your loved ones is stressful and it's time consuming. So what's happened right now may end up being your best solution. Most families that we talk to right now are doing share the care. They're tag teaming with a spouse or a partner, bringing in a family member or maybe a friend to help share the care. There's also groups that are doing what's called quarantines. It's 2 or more families teaming up exclusively and they provide care for one another. There's also people who have integrated nannies or nanny shares into their situation and or considering au pairs. I know several au pair situations that are working wonderfully right now. And so if that's something that you're interested, please be in contact with us. There's also an area that's fairly new with this pandemic called virtual babysitting. And it's primarily bringing in resources virtually while you're still at home working, but that are going to be things that really help your children focus on certain things. It could be music lessons, it could be exercise or gym classes, it could be tutoring of certain things, it could be learning new languages, help with their lessons. There's 2 programs that I know of that I really enjoy and like, and the one is gopeer.org and Hearts Over Hands. It's students and volunteers who come in virtually into your home and help your children for a period of time to learn a new skill or to with help with even homework. Okay. And then how do you make it work? We've all been juggling this for a long time. Again, depending on what your needs are, some people have to have really an absolute need for full-time care. Some do part-time, some do a few days a week. Some are sharing care with another family where one family does Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, another family does Thursday, Friday. There's also people who, even if they are home at work, bring in care into the home. There are some people who need different care in June, July, and August than right now, and some that are going to need to change their care as we phase our reopening and then beyond. So here's a few helpful strategies. One is adjust your start and end times before you work. Mary had mentioned using chunks of time that are going to better align with your availability and with your family schedule. Those are helpful. Staff can use paid time off in small increments as you need to. It was really a really big benefit to be able to use that time either half days or full days as needed. Staff who are caring for children with disabilities can use the New York State paid family leave. You can contact the Transition Center if you want more details with that. You can reduce your hours temporarily. As we come up on summer camp care, that might be something that you want to consider. There is a subsequent reduction in pay, but for some families, that may be the perfect solution. And then lastly is to discuss your work goals and priorities with your supervisor. Again, your plans probably have changed over time, and some works and some projects may be better aligned earlier in this, and maybe some are going to be a little easier later on. So we encourage you to align your current situation with your work projects and have those opportunities to talk more consistently about the outputs of your work. So lastly, new slide. We know that it's very difficult to replicate a care situation if you had one in place that was really working well for you and your family. We really encourage you to be flexible and open right now with a lot of creative solutions. And as what's been mentioned before, is that we are stronger when we work on solutions together, and give yourself space to be not perfect, but just to do the best that we can. And we are here for you. We appreciate an opportunity to work with you, and we'll continue to work with you over the next couple weeks. Okay.
Thank you so much, Diane. And then we're going to turn to some supplemental questions that have been coming in or were key themes in the questions that were submitted in the registration form. And the first one I'd like to turn to Mary. Mary, some families are concerned that they will be expected to return to campus as soon as their childcare or their school reopens. We're hearing from families that have health risk factors that are especially concerned by this, and just they are wondering if they can continue to work remotely. Do you have any comment on that?
We certainly heard this issue, and we're trying to sort it out. On the one hand, I think everyone is eager to get back to some semblance of business as usual. On the other hand, we do have individuals who are in vulnerable categories. And so we are working now to try to understand how we can accommodate for that. Some work can continue to be done remotely. Where that's possible, that may be a good accommodation. But candidly, we have work that is very hard to do remotely, and really people are struggling to stay engaged and contribute in a meaningful way. And that will be the harder conversation work that you can't accommodate by allowing it to stay remote. So we're talking about that now, thinking about it now, trying to figure out how to do that. And then I think the other part of the question is also people who will continue to have childcare struggles. So that's not really about a health issue. It's about the difficulty of not being able to find childcare, not having the schools reopen, things like that. Again, they're very understandable, reasonable questions. But we don't have the answers yet. We won't until we have a better sense of how the phasing affects us and where we are from a health standpoint and where childcare is at that point. So we're going to do the very best we can to be responsive to that, and recognizing that, you know, we are facing a rather difficult circumstance at the university right now. Many of our revenue generating opportunities for the summer are gone, and we do need to start to find our way back. So that's a balancing act. There's not a perfect answer to a very good question, but we're going to do the best we can.
Thanks, Mary. Sue, I'm going to turn to you next. We know of college students who lost internships or study abroad opportunities this summer. We know of high school students that may not have summer employment opportunities. Some of them may be interested in providing childcare. Some families are seeking them currently. Do you have any suggestions for parents who are considering hiring an informal babysitter or nanny, and some of the health and safety things that they should maybe take into consideration if they do that?
Sure. And I think I just want to add to what Mary was saying, that one of the things that could come up are sudden changes in your childcare situation. If a teacher is out for 2 weeks due to an exposure, then the classroom can't operate. So one of the things about more formal childcare is that the teachers do have to have certain kinds of qualifications and background checks. That's a good thing. It provides parents with some assurances that the person they're leaving their child with, either as an individual or in a group setting, is someone who's been trained and cleared with background checks. Very typically, the process doesn't happen quick enough for students to get that kind of setting, whether they're going to a child care program or not. In summer programs, there's ways that family members could at least do some preliminary checks, probably on their own. I think that when you're talking about making arrangements, typically people do it with someone they know. And one of the questions they'd want to ask is, how many people are you making arrangements with? Because if I'm going to care for someone's children at night or on weekends and then someone else's during the day, that person is making many, many different connections that you don't know about or see about with your children. So you want to ask those questions. That would be something that you should do to protect your child, and make sort of an agreement with that individual that it doesn't change, or you're notified of a change, so that parents know what to expect. I think another thing is to consider what the policies are going to be for payment if suddenly the situation changes. So with an individual or with the child care program, if someone has to stop care for 2 weeks, what's happening with the payment? It's best to know that kind of information up front. So there's everything from safety to real practical kinds of things that parents are going to have to deal with.
Thank you, Sue. Let's see here. So many to select from. Melissa, dealing with younger children who can't or won't engage with virtual activities and who are extremely upset by parents being present and working, but they can't interact with them, is something that we're hearing of. Do you have any wisdom or suggestions for them in terms of helping their children with this?
Sure. I think we talked about this in one of the first presentations we did, and maybe it was Diane that mentioned it, that you have to respond to your children. I mean, your primary, job is to care for your family, and it's okay to take that time out of your work to engage with your child. This is really hard for them too. So we want to make sure that they're getting what they need. We have to fill them up too. And then, hopefully once they're settled, they could move on. You can go back to work once they're settled and doing their thing. And we can't ignore the needs of our children too. It's really important to make sure to respond to them. And if you are able to talk with a supervisor and set different times, work times during the day, if your child always naps from 10 to 12, maybe that's a concentrated time when you're working, and in the morning, you're having that time with your child, and then you're working at different points during the day. Perhaps that could work.
Thank you. Mary, we are getting a lot of questions about temporary reduction in hours. The first one that's coming up is, if somebody temporarily reduces their hours, how can they be assured that their full-time position will be available when they're ready to return full-time?
It's a great question. So the best way to know what the need will be for your job is to ask. So if you have a position that is full-time now and that you're fully engaged with, And for very good reasons, you really need to step back. You just have too much and you need to be able to step back. Before you do that, I think the best advice I have is to ask your supervisor whether or not the position will be available to return back to in, whenever, say August. That's the best advice I can give you. It's an understandable question, especially given some of the messaging that's come out, being fearful about what that might mean. That's the best advice I can give. Is ask. If you are wondering what it might mean and worried about what it might mean, don't just worry, ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Mary, I'm going to ask you one more follow-up. We're getting some questions about how we're communicating with supervisors regarding these expectations and options that they should consider when supporting the employees on their teams.
So we have a campus group that is for managers, and we've been meeting and talking with them. If you're not on it, you should join it. And there's information on our website about how to do that. We probably will hold a broader managers forum sometime in the next couple of weeks. But those conversations have been very helpful. And so I would encourage you, the nice thing about the campus group for managers is the groups are a little bit smaller. And so it's easier to get your questions answered.
Okay, sounds good. Let's see here. Apologies, there's lots of different things coming in. Sue, I don't know if this one would be one that you would be willing to take, but the question is nanny sharing really recommended during a pandemic? And I know none of us are healthcare professionals, so it would be very difficult to provide full guidance on this, but any commentary that you want to add?
There's a lot of discussion about groups and group sizes and what's the best thing. I think I'd go back to the comment earlier that just find out how many ways that person who you're sharing can be exposed. And so when you go to work, when someone goes to work, they are being exposed to more people and they're bringing that home, and then they're sharing it with another child who's taking it to their family. That other family is also bringing in the outside. So it's a chain reaction that can happen. It doesn't mean that without safety precautions that it could happen, and it might be the best way for people who know each other particularly well and can set some basic parameters they can all agree to, that it could happen and be relatively safe. It's like family groups in a way. So I think it's certainly for consideration.
Okay, thank you, Sue. We have had several questions come in about the status of Cornell sports camps. One of them was answered in the Q&A, but I'd like to give an opportunity to Kath Benzel, the Associate Director for Cornell Athletics. She also oversees the sports camps, to answer this question and kind of tell us what's going on in her world. Kath, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Great, thank you for joining us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This has been informative for me too. So I appreciate everybody on the panel here. This is great. Yeah, so in terms of sports camps, I think the positive thing about this is the fact that the state has not yet terminated that the option still remains alive is pretty encouraging from our standpoint, for sure. We see particularly our Cubs camp, which is an all sports 5-day a week-long camp, really as a childcare option for so many members of the Cornell community in the greater Ithaca and Tompkins County area. So Cubs camp would remain our top priority for sure in trying to get that in with whatever that guidance and the directives from the state will provide. So unfortunately, we're in a bit of a waiting period, just as everybody else is. And as Sue had mentioned, looking for more of that guidance to come towards the end of May, beginning of June, realizing that we're gonna have to change what our normal has been for camps and making sure we meet all those safety requirements so it would be a very safe environment for all the kids and the staff as part of it. So every day we're coming up with new contingency plans, and my staff and I remain very hopeful that we'll be able to provide some form of camp. But for right now, we're not taking any registrations. It's just kind of paused until we have some of that further direction from the state and from the county.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kath. This next question that has come in speaks to academic staff. And Mary, this may be a question for you. What options are there going to be for work share programs for short-term reduction in time for academic staff? In this case, they have 2 full-time working parents and a young toddler.
Okay, so I think the question, if I understand it, is will there be an opportunity to drop? Is this job sharing or the formal New York State work share program?
Yeah, they're calling it the work share program. I don't know if there's potential thinking about the New York State program, which we were considering, or if there's another.
So I'm not sure how to answer the question because I'm not sure of the question. So let me just say there's a program that New York State offers employers called WorkShare. And we've looked at it and we may use it in some areas, but let me tell you what it is about the WorkShare to consider. It is not a voluntary program. So a person can't ask to be put on WorkShare. A class of jobs in an employer is placed into WorkShare and those jobs are reduced. So we've considered it in a couple of places where the work has changed for a whole group of jobs, and that's what we're looking at, the potential of that now. But for a couple, as an example, I think that's what you said, 2 academics in that would not meet the work share criteria. It would have to be a whole body of positions or in a particular department, something like that. So if that's what they were talking about, it has some real positives to it that we're still looking into, but it does have this element to it that doesn't allow for employees to opt in. That makes it a little difficult in our environment where we have so many different types of jobs in so many different types of areas. But if the question is more around sharing a role, if that's the question, we do have academics that do share a role. So we've got academics that share a line. So those are options. But I'm afraid I'm not doing a good job because I'm not sure I'm answering the question that was actually being asked. If the person who asked it wants to email me, I'd be happy to take the question offline.
Okay, great. So we are coming up on our time. We have 3 minutes left, a slew of more questions. I'm noticing that there's a lot of questions in here that we can answer by creating a kind of question sheet as a follow-up to this program. And so that's something the Work Life Office will be doing. Mary, I didn't know, did you have parting thoughts for this group before we wrap up? I wanted to make sure you had some time if you had anything.
So the first thing I want to do is I want to apologize because right in the middle of all of this, I got my Outlook crashed and I was getting all these messages on to try to restart it. So I'm sorry. But all of a sudden, and then before that, my dog wanted to get on the bed, but then couldn't, and then wanted to get out. And then my grandson was crying. So I apologize to all of you who I hope understand these things. So I think the only thing I would say in summary, I hope this doesn't sound patronizing, and if it does, I apologize, but these are extraordinary times and scary times, but there are little nuggets of blessings in this time. So if you can find them, maybe it's something as simple as being able to eat breakfast together when before you were all scattered to the 4 winds, or if you have teenagers, the fact that they're forced to socialize with you now, and that there's ways in which you have time with your however your family is defined, the group of people that you're living with that you wouldn't have otherwise. I hope you'll look for those, because there are blessings and joys in a horrible situation, and sometimes they're really hard to find. But other times, if we look for them, we can find them. And because there's a saying, right? If you're going through hell, keep on going. Like, we're getting through this, and we are going to come out the other side of this. And the things that will matter most to us on the other side of it are the things that mattered the most to us before this started, and they're still the things that matter to us right in the middle. So take care of yourselves and your family and your friends, and have faith.
Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you to all of our panelists and all of you, our participants today. This was the beginning of a really important ongoing discussion about family life. We are recording this, and we'll provide the recording in the follow-up email. Watch the weekly well-being updates and parenting newsletters for more information about future sessions and resources that we have available. And please don't hesitate to email the Work Life office at worklife@cornell.edu so that we can listen and learn about your experiences and try to offer support and resources as we can. So thank you very much. Enjoy your family this evening, and thank you. Take good care.